All right. So is my presentation visible already? Yes, yes. All right. Thank you for the likes. So yesterday we have talked about teaching strategies, whereas you would be the teacher teaching speaking to your students. Now, I asked you yesterday, what could be the fun activities that you will give your students if in case you would be the one to teach speaking already? And some of you do not really have ideas about what could be the activities that you could do inside the classroom. Some said role plays, and that would be good, a good example of a an activity or testing the speaking skills of your students. So to begin with, here's an introduction. There are actually a lot of standardized assessments in many countries. Like, for example, we have ENL countries, English as native language countries, and a foreigner wants to go there. There are institutions that test whether you are good enough to become part of their country, like to work there or to study in that particular country. So we have here the International English Language Testing Service, or IELTS. Probably you have heard about this. We also have the TOEFL, Test of English as a Foreign Language, and the other one is TOEIC, which is Test of English for International Communication. So these are standardized examinations that are being used so that we could test our people who are foreign to English or who speaks English as their second language could be accepted for work or for study in English as native language countries or in other countries who offers English for education. All right. But in the classroom, we do not use those standardized assessments. We are focused on outcomes based assessment. What do we mean by outcomes based assessment? So, right here, let's ask somebody to read to make our discussion more interactive. Let's have Corn to read this one. What is outcomes based assessment?
Yes. Outcome, Outcomes-based assessment means that the learner's performance is assessed against a series of internal criteria that describe the ability to perform a certain task or job. In some contexts, outcomes-based assessment is also referred to as competence competency-based assessment, a form of assessment that comes primarily, primarily from industry and business, where the competencies needed to perform a job are used to evaluate people's performance. In an outcomes-based system, it is possible for students to parti- partially achieve the outcome, since they may be strong on some performance criteria and less strong on others.
All right. Thank you for that, Corn. So, in outcomes based assessment, we are just testing the performance of the students through tasks or activities that we give them inside the classroom. Meaning, we want to track the progress of our students using outcomes based assessment. Meaning, probably you could use speaking tasks or activities. Let your students speak inside the classroom to assess their performance, and you could track whether or you could assess whether your students may be strong in some areas of their performance or they may be weak in some areas. All right. So it's just like Outcomes-based assessment will be there will be a specific criteria that you will be having in order to assess your students' abilities. Probably you have been acquainted with a rubric already, all right? You know what a rubric is. It is the one that we use to assess our students. Like, for example, there are criteria there that, for example, pronunciation, for example, fluency, or spelling, and all that. Those are the things that you could find in a rubric. All right, all right. So, as we assess speaking, here are certain principles that we should follow. The first one is Gwekong, please read this one. Just number one.
Students should be informed when they are being assessed.
All right, thank you. You have to make sure that your students know at that very moment that you are going to assess their speaking skills. Because sometimes the students let their guard down. They do not perform very well, thinking that you might not be assessing their speaking skills as of the moment. For example, you want to assess their speaking skills in the target language. In our case, we want to assess their English speaking skills. However, if your students don't know that they will be assessed in English, then probably they might use Khmer when speaking, or in our case, we might use Filipino when speaking, not knowing that our teacher will be assessing our English speaking skills. All right, get it? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Second, let's have Liang Hor. Are you there already?
Yeah, Chang.
Please read the second bullet.
Students should be informed how they will be assessed.
All right. The teachers should give the criteria before assessing the students. Like, for example, I will ask you to do a public speaking activity. So, before you will be assessed about that public speaking activity, I should give you the criteria that I will be using. And so that when you practice your public speaking, you already know on which points or which particular language feature you will focus, or the teacher will focus on assessing you. All right. Next, let's have Chamrem. Please read the third bullet.
Um, I'm sorry, sir. My place is a bit noisy.
It's okay. It's okay.
Um, okay, the third bullet. Teachers should make the criteria for assessment um, I think
Explicit.
explicit to the students.
All right. So it just means that the criteria that you will be using should be shown to your students. It's not gonna be the teacher only knows the criteria. All right. You have to let your students know that criteria you will be using for assessing them. All right. And then lastly, we have here the ratings, scores, marks, or grades attached to the criteria should be explained to the students. This one is in relation to bullet number 3, where the teacher's criteria for assessing the students should be explicitly explained or should be shown to the students. And so that the students would know why are they rated that way. It's not like, for example, I will give you, after a public speaking activity, I give you 75% for your grade. However, you don't know what you did wrong. All right. If I did not tell you the criteria, the students will become puzzled. How did they get that particular score? Or why did I get a score of 75? I am good with pronunciation. I am good with grammar. All right. So that way, you have to make it clear to your students that you are using a certain criteria for them to be assessed. All right. So here are certain assessment specifications. For example, you will be creating one assessment. All right. Let's say an interview, or let's say uh, a debate, or a role play, for example. So here are the questions that you have to consider if you will be writing or creating an assessment. First would be, what is the purpose of your assessment? Make sure that you know the purpose. Second, who are the students to be assessed? Third, what is the level of assessment? All right, so you also have to define if it is going to be an easy, difficult, or let's say medium level of assessment. What are the skills or knowledge that are being assessed? How many tasks do the students need to undertake to complete the assessment? How long will they have to complete the task? Are all the assessments, or are all the tasks weighted equally? What communicative situation does the assessment target? What type and length of texts are involved in the assessment? What language skills are being assessed, or language features are being assessed? For example, it could be grammar, pronunciation, stress, punctuation, and any language feature that you wish to assess. All right. In terms of communicative situations, may it be discourse competence that you're trying to assess, may it be a strategic competence or grammatical competence. It's all dependent on the teacher's decision. We also have a question, what tasks do they have to perform? Will it be a speaking task, a listening task, for example, or a reading or writing task? All right, so these assessment specifications would be generally used for all types of assessments that you'll be creating for your students. There's also a question, what instructions will be given to the students about completing the task? What criteria will be used to assess the performance, and how will the performance be rated and scored? So there are a lot of questions actually, but right here is a justification that, of course, not all these specifications will be required for every assessment process. You could answer just 3 questions, 4 questions, depending on the type of assessment that you'll be doing. For example, you will just have a reading task for the day. So you could answer, what's the purpose of your assessment? To help the students read, or who are the students to be assessed? Let's say second year high school students. Level of assessment would be let's say beginner level, depending on what level they are. All right, how long will it take? Let's say two to three meetings. So it doesn't really matter how many questions you were able to answer, as long as you have in mind that there are these particular specifications to consider. You have to develop your assessment tasks in this particular way and answering these particular questions, because this will help you to identify your objectives or your goals for the speaking assessment, or for the assessment that you will be creating. In our case, of course, we focus on speaking only because this is the subject that you are enrolled in. All right. Are you still with me? Just tell me if there are things that you can't understand. All right. All right. Thank you for that. Now let's move on to the tasks and activities that you could use for conducting classroom-based assessment. These are the performance tasks already. All right. It is encouraged that if you will be creating a classroom-based assessment, you have to record the performance, the task performance of your students, particularly in speaking. Why do you think is it necessary to have a recording of your students' speaking assessment? Like for example, I ask you to speak in front of the class about the thing that you are passionate about. For task 3, for stage 3, conduct of speaking task. Why do you think is it needed or necessary to record the performance of your students? Yes, you may
Uh,
answer.
yes, teacher. When we record the video of the student speaking, it would be easier for us to rewatch it and let the student see what they got wrong in that point. So we would correct them by showing the errors in the video.
All right. Thank you for that, Tooch. It's actually a way for you to really figure out their errors or mistakes that you may have missed in the actual speaking activity. All right. Stray right here said to know what they are lacking so we could find a solution. Good, good. All right. So it's also a way of assessing their mistakes. Pa said to know which level they are. All right. What level are you trying to say? Could you explain further, Pa?
Yeah, teacher. Because in a class there are many students with different level, teacher. Some students, for example, in pre-intermediate level, but some students, their capacity is just in beginner level, and the other are in pre-inter, like that. So we just want to know which level they are. We should ask them or doing something in order to make the class like more smooth to them, like that, teacher.
All right, thank you. That's also one good input to know which level they are. Actually, recording the task performance of the students will allow you or will enable the teacher to track the progress of the students. If there are improvements in terms of their way of speaking, that's one good way. Like you could backtrack. All right, during this time, during the first conduct of the speaking task, my students are only in the beginner level. However, once I compared that to the second task that they have conducted, probably you could see if there are changes or there are improvements in terms of the way they speak or they pronounce words, their grammar. Are they already on the proficient level, not on the beginner level? They are more fluent in terms of speaking. All right. So all of your ideas are actually correct, and it's part why we have to record it. But the main thing is that we could track the progress of our students through those recordings. All right. Did you get it? Thank you. Thank you. All right. Now we have real life assessments or classroom based assessments. They try to simulate things that are actually happening outside the classroom. Those are interactions that occur in real life contexts. All right. I have a question. When you are asked to recite inside the classroom or to speak inside the classroom, do you answer incomplete sentences all the time?
Sometimes no, teacher.
Sometimes no. So how do you answer or how do you speak? If not incomplete sentences, what are you using? Just words?
It depends on the question. The question is require complete sentence. We would answer that.
All right. So it depends on the question. Sometimes your teacher asks you, all right, answer in a complete sentence. All right. Probably if you are teaching young learners, they are always asked to answer in complete sentences. However, because in real life assessments, we want to be as realistic as possible. In reality, when we speak, we do not really answer or we do not really communicate using complete sentences. We just use phrases or just words. For example, I asked you, where can I find a WC? You just say, go there or in the left wing. All right. But you will not answer, you can find a WC in the left wing of the building. Right? In speaking inside the classroom as much as we can, we want to simulate real life contexts or real life situations. That's why we do not require our students to answer incomplete sentences as always. All right. So now let's move on for the first assessment task that you could do inside the classroom. It's called an interview. Have you been or have you watched an interview before? Yes, yes. All right. So most of you knows what an interview is. So generally, an interview is that there is an interviewer and an interviewee, whereas they would be asking certain questions towards the person, and then the other person would be answering those things for them to get to know each other well or better. All right. So we have the thing called individual interviews where there's just one person involved. Probably the teacher would be asking the students, and that's it. Here in my college class, I have an oral communication class, and what I do for their final examination is that I always ask them to prepare for a job interview. We are simulating a job interview. I am the one hiring them, and they will be in their corporate attire and acting as if they are in an interview. So I ask them, why should I hire you? And the student will say, because you are hiring, ma'am. All right. But that's not the case. It's just for fun sometimes. They answer really well, trying to simulate interview scenarios because they will not answer that kind of answer when they are in a real job interview. All right. So individual interview, there's the teacher asking the student about certain questions that has to be asked. And then we also have the thing called paired interview. So more likely there are two students that are involved in the interview process. All right. So instead of the traditional single interview, it could provide, let's say, a more extensive evidence for what the speakers could do in that particular performing task. All right. So it's not just the teacher assessing one student at a time. However, there could be two students being assessed, the interviewer and the interviewee. All right. It's also one way that you could help your students to collaborate inside the classroom. Sometimes students are really anxious about speaking in English, just like what we have talked about before. Yesterday, you were telling me that you're still nervous despite you are already in college. You still feel nervous, you still feel tense when you're asked to speak in English. And this way, a paired interview would be a great way to relieve the tension or the anxiety that you are feeling when you are being asked to be in front of the class and perform an interview or an interview activity, right? And sometimes, if there are two people, interaction is actually more natural. Like they are not being shy. Because if the teacher is the one assessing the student, interviewing the student, they seem to be a little stiff. They are like super anxious about the mistakes that they might commit. In a paired interview, it's a little natural, a little more natural compared to the individual interview. And then the last one, so we have individual, the second one is paired, and the third one is a group interview. All right. So group interview, more likely there's three or more students that interact with one another in the interview session. So right here, it's not just the speaking skills or the knowledge of speaking that the students get to practice, but they can also practice negotiating for turn taking when they are inside a group or in a group task. All right. So more likely they would be using their core speaking strategies so that they would know when exactly should they answer the question, who should answer first. All right. And it's a little more interactive, more natural also as compared to the individual interview. All right. I actually have here one activity that you will do right after our discussion. It's an interview task. So it's approximately 30 to 45 minutes because you would have to prepare certain things. And I will be giving you the instructions. I was thinking if we'll do it now because we had just 1 hour. All right. So we'll be doing the interview right now. Are you at school or are you at home?
And the room
Dorm
teacher.
room.
Home.
Home at home.
Yes, yes. All right. All right. But you have a way to contact one another, right? You could use your messenger, you could use video call, you could use your telegram. All right. Because I want you to work in pairs. All right. So as of the moment, we have 12 people. And I want you to choose your partner. So could you type here in the chat box who's going to be your partner for this activity? Let me show you the instructions. Share. All right. So here's the class interview activity that you'll be doing since it's already 9. And right after the interview activity, we'll be back and you will present this interview activity this morning. All right. So can you see it? All right. So we have a class interview activity, and the objective of this is, of course, to develop your interviewing skills and gain insights into your classmates' perspective. So approximately, you'll have 30 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on how fast you will be able to complete the task. So we will resume at uh, what time is it there? 9:40, and I am assuming that by 9:40 you are already completed with the task. So let's have, would it be fine if I'm the one to assign your pair, or would you like to choose your pair? Would you like to choose your partner, or I will assign who your partner is going to be? I will decide, or you will decide. All right. So Buddha said he's with Bore. All right. How about Chamrem? Corn. Tooch. Who's gonna be your partner? Chamrem with Stray. All right. Veng. Who's gonna be your partner? And Pa. All right. Corn. All right. How about Tooch? Who's gonna be your partner? You choose now. And all right. All right. Kwekong. Kwekong is with the Liang Hor now. She just said. Another one. Kwekong, Corn, Liang Hor. So, all right. So with, all right. How about si Veng? So the last one, the last pair would be si Veng and who? Shamrem? Alone? Why alone? You are 12 here. One,
Teacher,
two.
with Rachel, teacher.
All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11. Oh, you're just 11. So one group would be 3. All right. So si Veng would be with who? You adapt si Veng. One group, please. Who would like to adopt him? Tuch, you adopt si Veng. Will it be fine? All right. Thank you. Thank you. So I will be sending the activity in right here. I will now send the link to the interview activity. How do I share? Share. Share. Copy link. All right. All right. So here's the link to the instruction for the activity, and we will resume later at 9:45. All right. And you will be presenting the interview. If you have questions, please chat in the Telegram account, and I shall see you later. All right. Yes. Yes, pa.
Excuse me, teacher.
Yes.
What are we going to interview about?
So you're going to interview about anything. All right. Random questions. So you could ask them things that you want to know about them, or things that you want to know about, let's say, their thoughts, their ideas, anything.
Yeah, teacher. And one more question, teacher. For example, if I am uh an interviewer and my partner is an interviewee, so I just ask her, then she only answers me like that. Yeah.
No, you will, right here in instruction number 5, you will have to switch roles right after. All right.
Yeah, teacher.
So,
Thank you, teacher.
all right. So we'll see each other later. And after that interview, you will share interesting or surprising things that you have learned about your partner during the interview. All right. So do you get what you'll do? Do you get it? Do you get it? All right. So we'll see each other later. And that will be the time for sharing whatever you have learned about your partner during your interview. If there are any questions, you just chat in the group chat in Telegram. All right. I shall see you later. I'll turn off my camera for a while, but I will not leave. You may leave or you may stay. That's it. See you.